Breaking news. Just when it seemed like the bye week would be nothing but silence, an unexpected move shook the nest and completely changed the energy heading into the home stretch of the season. While many were still comfortable and waiting, the front office once again proved it thinks big, moves fast, and sees the game far beyond the horizon. This isn't a gamble or a panic move, it's vision, strategy, and the ambition of a franchise that knows the window is open and refuses to let it close for even a second. The defense gains a new weapon on the edge, someone arriving ready, explosive, familiar with the system, and capable of delivering the kind of impact that turns tight finishes into wins. This isn't about filling a roster spot, it's about sharpening the blade for January. If you felt that rush the moment this news dropped, you're in the right place. Hit that like button, support the channel, and if you can, drop a comment. Go Eagles, I believe. Right when everybody thought the bye week would be a breather, Howie Roseman fired off another move and changed the tone of this stretch run. The Jalen Phillips trade is one of those classic Howie swings, the type where you wake up, check your phone, and realize the front office is still playing chess while the rest of the NFC is trying to finish breakfast. Miami gets a 2026 third-round pick, and Philadelphia gets a player who fits exactly what this team needed: explosiveness, scheme familiarity, and a ceiling that lines up perfectly with a roster built to contend right now. This wasn't a reaction move or a desperate shot in the dark. The edge production this season simply hasn't matched championship expectations. Nolan Smith missed time, Brandon Graham literally came out of retirement, and while Jix Hunt has come alive the last few weeks, this was still a group missing a true game-changing force off the edge. Phillips walks in as the best pure pass rusher on this roster today. That isn't a projection, that's based on what he's put on tape. His burst, his length, his ability to win inside and outside, his discipline against the run, and now finally looking healthy after the Achilles and ACL setbacks. The arrow has been pointing up fast. Over the last several games, you saw it. The pressure spiked. The sacks started coming in bunches. Since week 3, the pressure rate has been near the elite tier, and that is not a small sample. This is exactly the moment when you want to buy on a player. Confidence rising, body cooperative again, learning curve flattened from running in Vic Fangio's system already. Plug and play doesn't usually apply to mid-season defensive acquisitions, but with Phillips it absolutely does. He already knows what Fangio wants, and that matters, especially for a team not looking to figure it out but to sharpen the spear before January. And the role? It's straightforward. Phillips, Nolan Smith, Jix Hunt, Josh Uche, Brandon Graham. A rotation built not just on talent, but on pace, power, and waves of speed that offensive lines cannot survive for 4 quarters. Add Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, and Moro Ojomo winning inside, and you create one-on-one opportunities across the line. Those are the reps that decide playoff games. That's how Buffalo beat Kansas City. That's how the Eagles nearly took down Mahomes themselves on the biggest stage. This is the formula. The draft capital? It's basically risk managed on every level. 2 third-rounders still in your pocket. A likely compensatory third if Phillips walks. A roster already built young and deep enough that you aren't plugging holes, you're reinforcing strength. And if he looks like the guy Vic Fangio believed he could be before the injury, he fits the Howie extension blueprint perfectly: age, ceiling, production without breaking the bank. When you zoom out, the timing also tells the story. NFC contenders have quarterbacks capable of hurting you in the playoffs. Baker Mayfield dialed in, Sam Darnold creating on the move in Seattle's offense, Jordan Love playing his best football yet, Stafford elite, and the Lions and Niners loaded. If you want home field advantage in that first round bye, if you want to walk into January with confidence, you stack every advantage possible. This is that move. The kind you make when you look at your roster, see the window wide open, and refuse to let it crack an inch. So here's the real question for the fan base as we build toward the second part of this deep dive. With Jalen Phillips joining this edge rotation and Vic Fangio finally having the pass-rushing personnel he trusts most, do you believe this is the final piece to push the Eagles over the top in the NFC right now? What happens next is where it really gets interesting, because this move doesn't exist in a vacuum. It signals intent. It tells every contender in the NFC that Philadelphia is willing to push harder, spend more, and stay aggressive in a season where most teams sit still and hope things fall their way. Howie Roseman refuses to operate on hope. He builds leverage. He builds depth. He builds layers so injuries don't derail momentum, so matchups don't expose weaknesses, so one bad stretch doesn't define the season. That mindset is why this franchise stays in the hunt every single year. And while the Phillips move stands alone as a major upgrade, it doesn't close the door on more. Even inside the building, you can feel it. The mentality of good isn't good enough before the playoffs hit. The offensive line remains a place worth monitoring. Tyler Steen has battled, he has held his own in moments, but the standard here is different. If there's an opportunity to upgrade with a player who can anchor the right guard spot and grow with this group long term, the front office will explore it. The same applies at tight end depth behind Dallas Goedert. This coaching staff values 12 personnel. They want a physical blocker who can also threaten downfield. And if a move benefits this season and the next era of Eagles football, it stays firmly on the radar. But step back from potential moves and look at what is already built. This defense suddenly has layers again. Young talent at every level. Veterans who understand playoff urgency. A disruptive interior that now pairs with a legitimate, explosive edge presence returning to form. This isn't a splash for headlines. It's a move rooted in football logic, film study, and understanding how postseason games are won. Pressure alters quarterbacks. Pressure shifts momentum. Pressure travels in January when weather, noise, and emotions rise. Jalen Phillips doesn't need to be a superhero here. He just needs to be himself, a smart, powerful, versatile defender who wins with burst, leverage, and timing. Surrounded by this defensive front, given rotation support, coached by Fangio in a system he already knows, he walks into a situation many pass rushers would dream about. That's why this trade matters. Not as a gamble, but as a calculated fit that elevates both player and team. So as we move forward and watch this rotation settle, as Nolan Smith returns, as Brandon Graham continues to give meaningful snaps, as Josh Uche and Jix Hunt build rhythm, the real opportunity unfolds, a defensive identity returning at the perfect time of year. The kind of identity that can take over games, swing a playoff matchup, and carry a team deep into January. If you believe in windows, this is one. If you believe in momentum, this builds it. And if you believe in the standard this franchise sets, then you know exactly why this move happened and why it matters. Now it's your turn. Drop your take in the comments. Does this trade push the Eagles into that definitive top tier for the NFC playoff run? And what move, if any, do you want to see next? If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you are subscribed, hit that like button, and check out the other video on your screen right now to keep rolling with the best Eagles coverage available. Momentum like this doesn't just shift on paper, it shifts in the locker room, on the practice field, and in the way opponents prepare. When a front office makes a move that tells the roster, we believe you can finish the job, players feel that. Coaches coach differently. Veterans sharpen. Young guys get hungrier. And every week builds toward the only thing that matters in a season like this, being the most dangerous, most complete team when the postseason hits. This is why Philadelphia separates itself from franchises that say they want to win and the ones that operate like winning is the only acceptable outcome. Depth doesn't happen by accident. Toughness doesn't happen by accident. And championship windows don't stay open forever. You lean into them. You take calculated risks. You make the roster uncomfortable in the best way, by raising the standard again. So as the schedule tightens and playoff positioning takes shape, understand what this trade really represents. Not just a pass rusher, not just a rotational boost. It's a reminder that the Eagles expect to dictate the NFC, not chase it. That the defense will not be reactive but aggressive, not hoping to hold on but built to attack. And that every week going forward, this team will play with the expectation of earning the right to host meaningful football in January. Now the question shifts to execution. Can this defense stack dominance? Can the offense complement it with rhythm, balance, and finishing drives? Can this roster stay healthy and continue peaking at the right time? These are the moments that build legacies. These are the moves fans talk about years later when revisiting championship seasons. Let me know your thoughts below. How confident are you now in this team's path to the NFC's top seed and a deep playoff run? And what matchup are you most excited to see this new-look defense take on? When you picture how this plays out on the field, think about what opposing quarterbacks are walking into now. 3rd and 7 in a cold December game at the Link, crowd roaring, offense behind the chains, headset buzzing in the QB's ear. He looks up and sees Jalen Carter shifting, Jordan Davis anchoring, Nolan Smith primed wide, and Jalen Phillips creeping just enough to make the tackle kick early. This is what winning in November, December, and January looks like, not just talent, but stress. Stress on protections, stress on timing, stress on quarterbacks who suddenly feel 2 seconds shrinking into 1. This move is not about one splash play. It's about layers of sustained pressure that compound over 4 quarters and 4 months. The kind of pressure that forces mistakes, forces throwaways, forces coaches to abandon parts of their game plan. That is how postseason football is tilted. That is how a roster announces, without speaking, that it intends to play into February. And here's the truth. The additions, the development, the chemistry, the buy-in, all of it comes down to one simple thread. This team is not trying to be competitive. It is trying to be complete. A complete team gets better out of the bye, not rusty. A complete team learns from early season inconsistencies rather than explaining them away. A complete team builds a roster that dictates terms instead of adjusting to others. This trade is a continuation of that mindset. So the challenge now is finishing the job, staying healthy, staying sharp, making every week heavier for the opponent than it is for you. And when playoff lights hit and the stakes rise, leaning on the fact that you were built for it, not with hype, but with substance, depth, aggression, and conviction. We are entering the stretch where contenders separate from participants. With Jalen Phillips joining this front, with this defense rounding into its identity, with Howie Roseman still lurking in the shadows ready to strike again if opportunity calls, the stage is set. The pieces are in place, the expectations are clear, and the path forward belongs to the team willing to seize it. Every season has a point where the rest of the league realizes a team has shifted gears, where the film changes, the tone changes, and what looked like promise starts to look like inevitability. This roster is sitting right on the edge of that moment. The bye arrived at the perfect time. The roster reset, injured players healed, coaches reevaluated, and instead of coming out of that break trying to rediscover rhythm, this team came out adding fuel to the engine. That is the mark of a franchise that understands windows don't politely wait for anyone. Not when the NFC tightens, not when matchups get heavier, not when January football demands clarity and execution at levels most teams never reach. This move for Jalen Phillips isn't about the hype cycle, it's about momentum at the exact point a contender must build it. You can feel the structure forming. You can feel roles getting defined. You can feel young talent ascending as veterans sharpen for the final stretch. Look at the defensive identity forming. It isn't just physical, it's layered, it's fast, it's disruptive, and it has depth that matters. Look at the coaching structure, built on communication, built on trust, built on accountability. Look at the schedule, challenges ahead that don't intimidate this group but excite it.